University College choirs. Leigh Crutchley looks at two University College choirs in Oxford and Cambridge that have inspired so much of the best in English church music: St John's College, Cambridge, and Magdalen College, Oxford.
Any weekday morning, if you're walking by the Song School of St John's College, Cambridge, at about 8:30, your footsteps may be lightened by that sound of the choristers limbering up, as it were, before their early morning practice. Or, if you're at Oxford, on Magdalen Bridge, you might see a walking crocodile of what look like diminutive undergraduates in their gowns and mortarboards. If you look closer, you'll see that their angelic faces belie their adult apparel, in the same way that, I was informed by their headmaster, the same faces belie their real characters. These boys are the Magdalen College choristers on their way to their rehearsal. Although there may be better-known choirs at the universities, it was these two that I wanted to hear and to explore. But not, let me say, to contrast, because this is one area in which the two universities do not compete. They're content just to give their best to the music they sing and to give the highest dimension possible to the act of worship. But it is nevertheless a job of work, and it's treated as such. At St John's, Cambridge, I met the choirmaster, George Guest, and learned something of the background of those who'd contributed to the college music in the past.
There's been a very long musical tradition here in St John's. Henry Purcell, you may remember, wrote a number of very distinguished bass solos for an incredibly low bass called Mr. Gostling. Mr. Gostling, and indeed other members of his family, were undergraduates here at St John's at about the time of the Restoration. Then we've also had here such eminent names in cathedral music as Walmsley, who was organist in the 19th century, and Cyril Roughton, and my predecessor, Robin Orr, the distinguished contemporary composer, who is now our professor in the university. And also one must say that during the war, while Professor Orr was in the services, the acting organist was Herbert Howells.
Dr. Bernard Rose, choirmaster at Magdalen College, Oxford, and who later gave me the opportunity of recording his choir's rehearsal of a recital of Christmas music, recalled his predecessors.
There was Richard Davey, who was the first English composer to set the words of the Passion, and people like John Shepherd, who was probably the greatest composer of the middle of the 16th century, and we've had composers like Richard Nicholson. Then there was old Benjamin Rogers, who caused so much trouble in the college, and then in later days we've had famous choir trainers like Sir John Stainer, Sir Walter Parrott, the fabulous Yorkshireman, Dr. John Varley Roberts, and more latterly Sir William Mackay, and so on.
Naturally, every choirmaster has his personal preference for the music that is sung. George Guest told me of his.
First, the music of Elgar. Secondly, plain song, in particular, as sung by the monks of Solesmes. And thirdly, Welsh hymn tunes of the 19th and early 20th centuries, as long as they are taken slowly. So often one finds wonderful tunes like Cwm Rhondda and Aberystwyth ruined, completely ruined, by people taking them so quickly that they sound like a third-rate ballad. But in the church service, there's very little scope for the music of Elgar. We do a certain amount of it, what is available, but there isn't very much. We sing a good deal of plain song, and we sing Welsh hymn tunes, I may say, whenever the opportunity presents itself. We have even gone so far as to learn Welsh. At 3 of our recitals recently, at Bangor Cathedral and at St Asaph Cathedral and Llandaff Cathedral, we sang a hymn which is a paraphrase of Psalm 23 in Welsh, and written by an old member of St. John's College, Archdeacon Edmund Pryce.
The word tradition is often loosely applied to the universities of both Oxford and Cambridge. But I wondered to what degree tradition dictated the choice of music in the college chapels, what was kept and what was discarded. Bernard Rose, choirmaster of Magdalen, gave me the answer.
The whole question of tradition is a very complicated one. I think, on the whole, that tradition is something which is hidden, and one feels, I think, every night that one goes into a service, that there is something there which certainly you yourself have not created. It is something which is latent, and I think that is really what tradition is. With regard to the things that we've kept, I really don't know. I mean, when I came here, the choir was very good. I've tried to make it better. I haven't drastically altered anything of the sort. But I think when you say, what does one discard, I don't think it's so much a matter of discarding what one thinks tradition to be as, shall we say, keeping up with the times. I mean, there's an enormous amount of music that we have in our library here. We've got a whole room full, in fact, of music which we don't sing. I've no doubt that 60 years ago this stuff was sung frequently. But if I put it on in the chapel now, people, I think, would probably laugh, because each age has its own standards, its own tastes, and so on. And what I try to do here is to, as it were, keep up with the times and sing music which one is prepared to accept in 1969. Gloria, 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 Gloria.
That was part of Carillon by Anthony Hopkins, sung by the Magdalen College choir. The treble parts are sung by boy choristers, while the alto, tenor and bass parts are sung by undergraduate choral scholars, or as they're sometimes called, academical clerks. George Guest told me how he chose the choristers.
We choose our boys simply and solely on intelligence and on musical ability. We look for quickness and intelligence in a boy, and we hope and indeed expect that he is not below average academically for his year. Money doesn't really come into it, because as a boy successful in gaining a choristership at St. John's, or indeed at any other cathedral choir, is awarded a scholarship, which in many cases takes care of perhaps as much as 3/4 of the boys' fees at the choir school.
Similar standards are applied at Magdalen by Bernard Rose, though one of his early predecessors used a more unorthodox method of recruiting choristers, with a disastrous result.
John Shepherd was short of choristers, and so he got in his pony and trap, or whatever vehicle he was using at that time, and went down into the West Country. And when he was in Malmesbury, he heard of a boy with a splendid voice, so he heard this boy sing, and he thought, this is just the boy for me. So he put him in his vehicle and proceeded to drive it back to Oxford. He couldn't make Oxford that day, so he stopped at Farringdon in one of the hostelries there, and the next day brought this boy to Oxford. He got him here so late that he couldn't take him to the school, so he put him in the antechapel and locked the door. And the terrible story is that when they went in there the next morning, this poor little boy was dead. Whether he died from hunger, thirst, or fright, we don't know.
So John Shepherd press-ganged his boys. But how do choristers today feel about being put into a choir school?
I find that being a chorister gives me much more of an idea of music. Before I came to St. John's, I didn't really know the first thing about music except how to do a bit of singing. I could sight read vaguely, and I knew various scales, but since I've come here I've got to enjoy music much more and see the differences in music. For a very, very fast piece, like a bit of Haydn, it's a tremendous feeling of, speed, and we have been making a series of records on his masses. They're all sort of music you hear at the proms, very fast, and you're ending up with a very bashed ending, or most of the Gloria normally always does. I find it's terrific fun recording them, and means that I know more about the music than I do if I just hear it. Haydn needs much more tone and much more harshness with your voice. I feel you can let yourself go slightly more in Haydn than you can in various other pieces of English music.
Did being at a university mean anything to this chorister?
I feel much more a part of the university since I've become higher up in the choir, and we do more things. For instance, when we come and we sing at grace anthems, I feel when I talk to a friend that I have something to do with St John's College and the University of Cambridge.
What does music in relationship to religion mean to you?
I think the music means more to me than the religion. When I'm singing in the chapel at college, I get most of my religion at school because we have frequent services. I mean, it doesn't mean to say that when I come here I completely forget about God. I do think I come here for religious reasons as well, but I somehow think music is slightly on top when I'm here.
I understand that you're fond of painting.
Yes.
Do you find that the two art forms at all merge?
Yes, they do. If you look at a very well-painted picture, and it is very flowy, and you have a bit of music written about it, the music will quite definitely have a flow in it. But if it's a picture of a war, a Trojan War or something, I would more expect a much louder and much harsher piece. And I think they do merge in various ways.
So that when you paint, do you sometimes feel music, I won't say in your mind, but in your soul?
I think I do in ways, yes.
And what does the choirmaster feel that his boys get from this specialized training? Bernard Rose.
The first thing I'm quite sure which he does get out of it is a sense of standard. If a boy makes a mistake in a service, he comes up to me afterwards and says, I made a mistake. And I say, well, that was very naughty of you, don't do it again. This in itself gives the boy a sense of standard, and I think this, particularly in these days, I think this is a vital thing, and I think this is really the great thing that these boys get out of it. They have to be, as it were, at concert pitch. That's a bad word to use, concert, because we don't give concerts at Evensong. It's all part of the worship. But they have to be at concert pitch, as it were, the whole time. And this means that they have to concentrate hard for 3/4 of an hour. And I think for any child at that age, this is a most valuable training.
And how do choirmasters set about getting a boy to the state of mind where he's able to accept this kind of training and discipline? George Guest.
One common factor, I think, in all boys is pride. Pride in themselves, pride in their work, and in this case, in their choir. It's a very important aspect of my work, I believe, to instill this pride into not only the boys, but also the men. That is the most important thing of all. Discipline, I believe, should take care of itself. If one has a good tradition of head choristers, well then discipline is no problem. Two other things I would like to say. One is that I believe that one should always treat boy choristers as adults, never as children. They like to be treated as responsible professional or semi-professional musicians, which is of course what they are. And the second thing, which was told to me when I was a young man, and I believe it's still to be very true, never let the choir or any member of it think that it knows what the choirmaster is going to say or do next.
Occasionally, even the best choir master can make a mistake, and the boys are quick to tell him.
And the rest of the canine up there, and cantoris. Oh, is that right? All right, soloist top note then, rest of the canine, F sharp, cantoris, D sharp. Okay, let's just try that. I didn't feel like that. All right. Leading in, please. Last 4 bars. 1, 2, 3.
But, like other boys, choristers have to be educated. What standards do they have to have when they join, and is it easy for them to sustain an academic level? Alan Tamage is headmaster of Magdalen College School, where the choristers go.
They have to be intelligent boys. I don't know whether the public quite gather the fact that singing is really quite difficult, and that unintelligent boys are not really able to master the complexities of a musical score. And so the mere fact that we enter them means that they've got a certain standard of education. And most of them go on, and a lot of them do very well indeed.
How does a choir boy stand up against one who is not in the choir? He has many extra duties that he has to perform. Does his work suffer?
I think when he's very young, he is perfectly all right, because we put them in a special form. They are looked after by a very experienced master who takes them for a good part of the week. And of course we watch their progress very carefully. And I think if you compare these younger boys with primary school, they do very well indeed. There then comes a rather uncomfortable time for them, round about the ages of 12 and 13, when they're in the main school and singing. And here it is a little bit tricky. Again, most of them are boarders, and they are carefully watched and given extra help if they need it. But I think it would be a mistake to pretend that they weren't pretty hard worked during this time. Of course, what they get out of it is the most tremendous self-assurance, nice diction. It's very easy when you go and talk to a sixth former to tell if he's an ex-chorister or not. And a lot of them come back into the choir when their voices break, or alternatively go into dramatics. Some of our best actors are also ex-choristers.
Sir Laurence Olivier was a chorister, which gives force to the headmaster's statement. While, of course, the choir master's principal concern is the overall quality of his boys, he has to single out some from time to time for solo work. A boy soprano who many will remember was Ernest Luff, whose voice was considered something of a rarity. How often, I wondered, did a boy with such a voice happen within a choir?
I believe on average about 1 every 8 years in a good choir. I have been associated with St. John's now for 22 years, and during that time we have had 3 such boys. We've had a number of extremely good boys, but of the boys who could be placed in the same division, as it were, as Ernest Love, I believe we've had 3 only. And we have 1 at this present time.
Many parents with a boy of between 7 and 9 who shows an aptitude for music and whose talents they'd like to extend by sending him to a choir school feel that such an ambition is outside either their social or financial range. Is this true? I asked the headmaster of Magdalen College School.
I should say quite the reverse, actually. The head chorister until last year was the son of a village postman in a rural area. A lot of the choristers come, in fact, from church choirs in small districts, and of course the fact that they are only going to pay half fees at this school makes it possible for boys to come here who would otherwise not be able to do so, simply financially. After they've finished their time, when their voices break, most of them, I'm happy to say, stay on, and the college do assist them to do this.
Having discussed choristers behind their backs, let's again listen to their own feelings. One particular boy at St. John's summarized in conversation with me what I'd found to be the universal feelings.
The music is very interesting that we do, Palestrina and all different types, Haydn, Wesley. Yeah, I like Haydn, he's one of my favourite composers, and I find his work very interesting.
Haydn is, of course, a Viennese. Do you have to sing in two separate styles, the English style and the Viennese style?
We sing in the Viennese style for Haydn and for Palestrina and things like that.
Do you find it difficult to learn these various styles?
Well, I've got one. I've got the sort of Viennese style, I think, and I sort of find it, yes, I don't have to learn much.
Looking back, what has it meant to you?
Well, I've gained a very good education in music and at school. It's given me a wide variety, wide range of things. I like it a lot. It's taught me a lot.
Are you glad that you came to a university choir as opposed to a cathedral choir?
Yes, because you've got the university around you. It sort of protects you, and you've got something which the choir's based on. In the university, you've got other functions such as the May concert, which we do every year, and the grace anthems in the feasts, which I like doing. It's nice seeing all the fellows and visitors in the college, and having the feast yourself.
Do you feel a part of the university?
I do, in the choir, yes. Singing in the choir.
What do you think about during the service?
Well, I have to think about the music, and I do most of the time.
Do you feel that you miss out compared with your fellows who are at school, who don't have to do all the practicing and don't have to attend the services? Do you feel you're being deprived?
I feel far the other way. I like singing. It's nice sort of being superior to them in that one way. It's nice being in the choir and regarding yourself as a singer when they are unfortunate enough not to be.
In other words, life is a challenge.
Well, it's nice to be able to get a bit higher and take challenges and fail or pass and so on. You've got to take some risks, otherwise it won't be much fun. It's nice to have a challenge there, you know, you've got something to do. You've got something to work for.
What are you going to do when you finish, when your voice breaks?
I'm going to go to college, Epsom College, and study medicine.
And what do you think music is going to do for your life in medicine?
I'm taking it up as a sort of pastime, hobby. And I like practicing my instruments. And I like playing them in concerts and things.
To a degree, you live amongst beauty and you sing beautiful works. What does beauty mean to you?
Well, how it's based, the liveliness of it, if it's not the chords in music or anything like that, it's just the base of the music, what it's formed on. I mean, Haydn, it's lively and sometimes sad, and other works just have their own sort of selves. They have their own feelings, sort of thing. You've got to put something into them to make them work.
Stephen Sykes, Dean of St. John's College, agreed with the chorister.
I think this is absolutely right. They have to concentrate very hard indeed when they are doing their singing. And if one looks, for example, at the vestry prayer, it's not intended to be a prayer of spiritual preparation for the choir. It's a handing over of the work which they are about to do to God. It's saying, look here, God, we've got a great task to do. It's going to take all our attention. May it be to your honor and glory, and to the further enlightenment and deepening of those who are worshipping here. It's an act of self-sacrifice in many respects.
The Echo Carol by an anonymous composer sung by Magdalen Choir. I've concentrated so far on the boys' singers. I make no apologies. Generally speaking, they sing the melody, the part that is easiest for most of us to concentrate on, and of course, they also tend, as we listen to them, to touch the heartstrings. But a choir would be nothing without the body of the music, which is given by the altos, tenors, and basses. As I've said, in the majority of college choirs, these voices are provided by undergraduates, the choral scholars or academical clerks, who, like other undergraduate scholars, benefit financially from their talents. But where do they come from? How do they know when to apply, and what particular disciplines do they follow?
We advertise in various ways. In the press and also through the various schools in the country. And these academical clerks, if they get into Oxford, they read any subject they like. Some of them read music, some read medicine, some read PPE and so on and so forth. They read absolutely any subject they like. Now, one of the great difficulties in selecting academical clerks is by no means always a vocal matter. It is a matter of their competence in the subject which they want to read. And I spend quite a lot of my time on my knees in front of my colleagues trying to persuade them to take a man who's got a magnificent voice but who hasn't got a very good academic record at school. And this is one of the great difficulties, because they have to behave in the same way academically as all the other undergraduates in the college, and they've jolly well got to pass their examinations in the same way.
George Guest told me of the musical duties required of the scholars by the colleges.
They have to sing at all the services, and here at St. John's we sing on every day except one in a week and twice on a Sunday. They also have to take part in the various broadcasts that we do and the various commercial gramophone records that we make and the various outside recitals that we give. They also have to turn up to rehearsals, not in a blank state of mind, but having learnt the music beforehand, so that when they come to full rehearsal, the final gloss, one hopes, can be put on their performance.
An academical clerk in his third year at Magdalen described how he came to Oxford.
When I was abroad in Kenya, I became very interested in the choral music, and I was introduced to it by working in the Cathedral in Nairobi. And through this, I became interested in singing, and then I wanted to do some further study in music. And so I came back to England and found that I could get into Oxford with the singing as a help. And so I did this. And I came along to the choral trials, and I was accepted as a tenor here.
You're now in your third year. What has being in the choir meant to you as an undergraduate?
Well, this is rather difficult, because it's difficult to know how life would have been if I hadn't been in the choir. But I think I'm very glad I have been, because it's been something that, well, it's a job to get on with every day, for one thing, which I think is a good thing to have, apart from one's academic work. I think it's good to have something that takes one away from one's academic work. And, of course, I love the music. I'm reading music anyway here, and I find the music very interesting. And I think, from every point of view, I enjoy having to come into chapel today and rehearse and then sing a service.
Another academical clerk was at Magdalen because he'd a next-door neighbour who must have heard him singing in the bath.
I suppose it's quite a weird history of how I came actually to apply here, because I'm not from a musical family particularly, and nor am I from a chapel or cathedral choir. No history of that sort of thing. In fact, somebody just said to me when I was in the garden, why don't you apply for some kind of choral scholarship at either Oxford or Cambridge, from somebody who was a choral scholar at Cambridge. And that set me thinking. And I started to look into this. I'd always been interested in church music, but I had no history of singing in any particularly good choir. And it was through going to Coventry Cathedral for 2 years running and doing a course for prospective choral scholars that gave me an idea of the standard required and what I had to do. And I set about it with my music master at school and came to apply.
You're now in your second year. What has being an academical clerk meant to you?
Well, I think two things. First of all, it's given me a great opportunity to sing some marvellous music and a choir of a very high standard, which otherwise I would never have had the opportunity of doing. And perhaps more important, I think, when I look back on being here, is it's given me an opportunity to make some very, very good friends. Because they're all undergraduates in the college, we have to work together for 2 hours a day. Most people regard it as an honour being here and regard it as great fun. And we enjoy being together, I think.
How do you see what you will have taken from the choir after 3 years contributing to your attitudes and your work in later life?
Well, I don't think it'll contribute very much to my work, because with reading politics and philosophy, it's got little to do with the choir. But it will have been a very enjoyable part of my life, and it will always deepen my interest in music.
George Guest has told of how the singing of plain song by his choir at St. John's College is a particular feature of the music there. The choir particularise even further by specialising in the plain song of Salem. He told me about it.
Solesmes is a Benedictine monastery in the province of Sarthe in France. The monks for many years have as their main work the task of compiling what they believe to be authoritative versions of the various pieces of plain song sung in the Catholic Church at Mass and at the daily offices. Their choir, which is a word I suppose that ought to be in inverted commas because it does in fact consist of every monk, young and old, the choir sing in a style recommended by their choirmaster, Dom Gajal, and although I know it is controversial, the effect, the musical effect on the listener is one of almost indescribable beauty.
St. John's College singing Requiem Aeternam, a work of the monks of Solesmes. So both the choristers and the choral scholars enjoy what they do. But is their work appreciated by the members of the college which they serve? And do undergraduates appreciate their chapel? Stephen Sykes, Dean of St. John's.
About 3 years ago, there was a questionnaire put out by the undergraduate junior combination room committee, which asked precisely this question of the whole college. And very nearly 60% of the college said that they were proud of their choir. This really did surprise us, that so large a percentage of the college should regard the choir in this particular light. But one must also say that at present, nothing like 60% take an active interest in the choir. Indeed, there's room for very considerable improvement here.
Then, does their music really contribute to the college life? And if so, how? George Guest.
It contributes, I think, in two ways. In the first place, the college has a certain musical reputation which is involved with its choir. It is a thing which the college in itself is, I believe, proud of. But the second and more practical way is that it does, I think, help to attract a congregation to our services in the college chapel. Don't forget that at Cambridge we have, as rivals, if one may use such a word, various churches who, frankly, go in for gimmicks. For instance, you might find a sermon described as, "Come and hear Dr. So-and-so preaching on sex and sin." At the same time our services will go on, they will be the ordinary services of a sung Eucharist in the morning and evensong at night. We make no concessions to the permissive society, and I believe we attract our congregation in just the same way and perhaps for more laudable reasons.
Gerald Crawford is a fellow of Magdalen College.
I think that the chapel services always have been really an integral part of college life. I mean, the founder of the college, Bishop of Winchester, intended that the college should be a place for the advancement of learning and, as he put it, for the attainment of true godliness. That's the old wording. And I think this has certainly been the case in the past, and I think it still is. I think the college should be regarded both as a place of learning and also it should be regarded as a place of religion.
Bernard Rose of Magdalen.
I'm convinced that I can say that within recent years it has become much more a part of the college. We get quite a lot of undergraduates who come to our evensongs regularly in the college, and we hope that we are adding to the repute of the college by attaining a reasonably high standard, and by going on foreign tours and so on, we take the name of the college abroad, and we hope that we are thereby doing the college a service.
That was part of The Star Song by Kenneth Leighton, sung by Magdalen College Choir. Both the universities of Oxford and Cambridge are made up of a number of colleges, but only a few have what I feel I can call now, because of their standards, professional choirs. How far do the members of these choirs contribute to the musical life of the university as a whole? Bernard Rose.
This is where I think we have a very definite part to play, and we get a lot of the music students who come to our services regularly, and this of course keeps me on the mark. It means to say that I have to choose the music carefully, and what we do here is to sing music of all periods. We go back as far as we can. We sing 14th century music, and we sing music right through the centuries, and we also have quite a lot of music written for us by the younger English composers. And I think this is a vital function of the chapel choir within the musical life of the university.
George Guest.
The choral scholars indeed do, and in the University Music Club and in the various orchestras and the various ad hoc choirs, which one can find in any university city, our choral scholars are certainly to the fore. Some might say even that they do too much outside work.
Lord David Cecil, until recently a professor of English literature at Oxford.
I think it has a very special and a very valuable place, because in the great college choirs of Oxford and Cambridge is continued the long and beautiful tradition of English church music, which is something peculiar to England, the particular style of singing, the particular music that's written for it. And whereas cathedrals, of course, do and can continue this tradition, cathedrals are there to do lots of other things as well. But college chapels have more leisure to spend on this kind of thing. And it is a sort of scholarly place where the music can be preserved, studied, and performed. And I've got a more imaginative feeling for it, too. I think it gives a sort of aesthetic and imaginative color to university and college life, that in these beautiful old buildings, there it is every evening. You can hear this exquisite music being sung, and of course a lot of, not just old music, a great deal of very modern church music is tried out.
That was part of Everlasting Mary by Gregory Rose, son of the organist of Magdalen College Choir. The place of music in worship has recently been quite hotly argued among both congregations and clergy. There are those who feel that music gets in the way of worship and see the choir's place as only to lead the congregational singing. These people are worried that music is being kept as the preserve of the special few who are trained to sing it well. But what did the Dean of St. John's, Cambridge, think about this?
For me, worshipping in this particular atmosphere is a most enormous privilege and most helpful to my own spiritual life. I know that it's fashionable to drive a wedge between mere aesthetic experience and religious experience. But this seems to me to be a grave mistake, because so often, and for so many people who I have the privilege of talking to after the service, the atmosphere of the service, the music, the way it's approached, the kind of act of worship which the whole thing is, has been for them an opening of the heavens.
And Lord David Cecil.
You might say that they also don't like the architecture because it's like an exhibition. I don't know. I mean, no doubt, if the music is concentrated on in a rather unreligious way, as it were, and it's made to like a concert, that would be a pity. But I would have thought that otherwise, music enhanced the spiritual and emotional effect of the service very much, just as the architecture does, and the stained glass windows and the language of the literature.
Dr. Bernard Rose.
The sort of service that we sing here, we hope, achieves a high artistic standard. And the attitude which I take towards this is that by so doing, we are adding to the act of worship. And this is what I explain to my choir, and they appreciate this. If somebody comes along in the middle of the service and joins in and sings the boy's part 2 octaves lower, this is, I think, exhibitionism on the part of this individual. Nobody, surely in their right mind, could say that this was enhancing the act of worship. It seems to me that this is quite unacceptable. And another point which I think is extremely relevant in connection with this, the the British or the English choral tradition is unique. Any country in the world that you go to, they will have to agree with you over this. It is a unique tradition, and it seems to me that we have got to preserve this at all costs. It is an expensive business, and therefore, in a place like a university, if this can be maintained, if finances can be found for maintaining this tradition, I think this is a contribution which the universities should make. It must be kept alive somehow, and it seems to me that this is one of the few areas, shall we say, in which this superb tradition, this superb English tradition, can be kept alive, and I think it simply must be kept alive.
To add force to their convictions, this program ends with the psalm, "I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills," sung by the choir of St. John's College, Cambridge, simply, and I believe very beautifully.
Amen.